It's 6 p.m. Eastern in New York City. It's time for the Daily Wrap. And welcome to the show, everybody. Tonight we have an all-male panel on the Daily Wrap. I believe that's a first, and probably for good reason. First, he was GQ's Man of the Year, really, in 1979. And is currently a Sirius XM radio star and Forbes columnist. Rick Unger, everybody.
Who brought the cigars and the scotch?
That's for after the show. And without a doubt, our next panelist is probably the toughest on the set. Former Navy SEAL, author of Battle on the Home Front, and he also ran for Congress. Carl Higbie is here. Thank you, Carl. And finally, he is a popular television and radio commentator, not to mention has 3, count them, New York Times best-selling books under his belt. Ellis Hennigan is here.
So, you know, it requires tough and tender.
Tough and tender.
I want to look under your belt.
Pen and the sword.
Without further ado, this is your daily download. Well, for the past few days, the president has been meeting with Muslim leaders and others to discuss how to deal with ISIS. If you've watched this show lately, you know we've been talking a lot about the president refusing to call out ISIS and other terror groups killing in the name of Allah as Islamic radicals. So, why won't the commander-in-chief bring Islam into the debate? Well, because no religion is responsible for terrorism, as you'll hear here.
Of course, the terrorists do not speak for over 1 billion Muslims who reject their hateful ideology. They no more represent Islam than any madman who kills innocents in the name of God represents Christianity or Judaism or Buddhism or Hinduism. No religion is responsible for terrorism. People are responsible for violence and terrorism.
And today, the president continued with that rhetoric by noting the West is not at war with Islam.
The notion that the West is at war with Islam is an ugly lie. And all of us, regardless of our faith, have a responsibility to reject it.
So who are we really at war with, Mr. President? If we are not fighting in the name of religion, why does ISIS continue to grow with followers?
But when people, especially young people, feel entirely trapped in impoverished communities, where there is no order and no path for advancement, where there are no educational opportunities, where there are no ways to support families, and no escape from injustice and the humiliations of corruption, that feeds instability and disorder and makes those communities ripe for extremist recruitment. And we have seen that across the Middle East, and we've seen it across North Africa. So if we're serious about countering violent extremism, we have to get serious about confronting these economic grievances.
Seems like the president is doubling down on what State Department spokesman Maria Harf said yesterday and has been getting a lot of flack for. Yep, that appears to be the case.
Here at this summit, the United States will make new commitments to help young people, including in Muslim communities, to forge new collaborations in entrepreneurship and science and technology. All our nations can reaffirm our commitment to broad-based development that creates growth and jobs, not just for the few at the top, but for the many.
Well, as you can imagine, the New York Post totally agreed with the president. Let's look at the cover today. Okay, maybe not. What does ISIS think? As you can see the cover there, Islamic terror, I just don't see it. Boy, they get more creative every day. In the latest edition of a popular ISIS magazine, Dabiq it is pronounced, a spokesman said, and I quote, Islam is religion of the sword. Muslims will continue beheading non-believers until Jesus slays the Antichrist. That's nice. The cover of the magazine seems to follow suit. There it is, sword, green background. They're very advanced as far as media goes. We've seen that with ISIS in their videos as well. Meanwhile, as we pointed out before, the president's approval on the handling of ISIS continues to sink, with a new CBS poll showing 57% of Americans now disapproving of his handling of the situation. We will get to that poll a little bit later in the show, but Rick Unger, does the White House, from a PR standpoint, have a major problem on their hands?
You know, I hardly know where to begin with that commentary. It was unfair from the word go. If you listen to the past two speeches, this morning's and yesterday's, he absolutely kept referring to radical Islamic terrorists. Now, if you think that we are in a battle with all of Islam, then I guess that's what you think. I don't think that's the case at all. I think we're in a battle with radical Islam. And you know that I've been critical of the president for not, for this great fear he has of using the words, radical Islamic terrorist. I think he should have. I think it's become a diversion, and I think it's silly. But you've got to be fair. Look, the public is going to remain unhappy with him, as they should, until he comes up with a new strategy. As I consistently say, he had a strategy. It didn't work. We did not deplete their numbers. They're going up. Didn't work. So now we need a new one. And until he comes up with one and puts it into effect and we see some success, people aren't going to be happy, and they shouldn't be.
Carl, you see that New York Post cover. Was it fair?
But I think absolutely it was fair because, I mean, look, these guys are sitting in their cave, beating their head against the wall saying, why won't he even call us what we want to be called? And then, you have Eric Holder going out on his way out the door. I don't even know why they're giving that guy any camera time anymore. But they said, oh, well, if Fox News didn't talk about this, they'd have nothing to talk about. Well, you know what? Who cares? That's fine. We're trying to label it because you can't defeat an enemy you don't label. But
why?
Because and let's say we don't label it. Go ahead and just fight it anyway in the meantime, and then we'll label it later. But I think that the cover was completely fair. I think is very accurate because he doesn't see it for what it is.
Alice, do you think that the president's trying to be sensitive towards all under the Islamic umbrella to not cause any sort of pushback from moderates in Islam? In other words, is he trying to be a little bit too sensitive here, or do you think it's the right play?
I don't think it has anything to do with being sensitive. I think it's about being smart, right? I mean, all these slogans are easy, right? We all agree ISIS is terrible. We should try and find some smart way to deal with it. But clearly, the cliches aren't working, right? We don't want to send 500,000 troops there. I think most of us
Why?
agree about that.
I don't.
Well, most Americans aren't with you on that. If you think he's got trouble with 55%, go see how many people want to do another 10 years with hundreds of thousands of troops in the Middle East. You and 3 other people may be the extent of that
Actually,
list.
well, you'll be a little surprised here. I don't know
think
that
you're
I'd go
wrong.
with 500,000, but the point that I keep making is it may be the same land, but it's a different war, and Americans have to
and you
stop
know what? And you know what? We
conflating
have to
that.
deal with. We have to deal
We
with it a
do.
little more smartly this time.
smartly is good.
For instance, why don't we arm people over there who will do it? Why don't
tried that. We end up fighting them every
and you know
decade.
what? And we suck at that. We're not good
Actually,
at that,
but
and
you know
we
what
don't know
we
how
are
to
good at?
leave.
You know
We
what
don't know how to leave.
But you know what we're good at? This country has always been good at confronting evil. And this is my objection to the way this whole thing's playing out in terms of the debate. We're being sidetracked. These guys are evil. I want every
enough.
single one of
Fair
them
enough.
dead.
But let's do
The
something
US
that'll work.
But the
Let's do
U.S.
something
is
that'll
good
work.
at doing
Bombs and
evil.
ground troops are
You
good.
But I
like-
agree
you like
that the
Guess what?
should work.
You
It's
like
not
Iraq?
Afghanistan.
Guess what?
Same land, different war.
Guess what? I have a surprise. We're actually going to continue this discussion because it's so good. We're going to have to pick it up right after the break. This is the Daily Wrap, only on Newsmax TV.